Welcome to Alpha Recaps. Today we are going to tell you about a film called Invasion, released in 2007 and starred by Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig. In the first scene, a woman named Carol go out for a walk, but she notices something very strange. People seem to have become soulless with straight faces as there is no emotion at anyone's face. It's like the place has turned into a dead town. To make matters worse, the people with emotions are caught by the police. An old lady keeps saying don't sleep, but even police captured her too. After a little walk, a normal-looking officer comes to Carol and he notices that she is sweating, so he warns her to run away or else she will be caught and killed. It comes to know that showing emotions or sleeping will cause death. After this, the scene jumps to a few days ago. A space shuttle explodes on Earth's surface and its debris scatters across many states in the US. The whole media in the country is covering that event and taking it as a sign of alien invasion. On the other hand, the people are scared and they hesitate to touch the debris, fearing that it has been infected. Meanwhile, the head of the Center of Health Organization, Tucker Kaufman, arrives for inspection at one of the crash sites. The research team told him that the piece of debris was laced with a mysterious organism which has the ability to withstand enormous radiation. The organism can also multiply at a rapid rate, proving that it is alien. When Tucker is preparing to leave, he accidentally touches a small piece of debris and receives a cut on his finger, but he doesn't think much of it and went back his home. In the night, Tucker starts sweating heavily and experiences an intense cellular condensation on his face. Looks like something has taken over him. In the next scene, we are introduced to Tucker's ex-wife Carol. She is a psychiatrist who lives with her son, Oliver. Oliver had a nightmare and screamed, but his mother instantly came to calm him down. Next morning, Carol gets a call from Tucker who wants to see his son, but as expected, she turns down his request and hangs up. After that, she drops off Oliver at school and goes to her workplace. On the way, she runs into her best friend, Dr. Ben Driscoll, and takes a lift. Driscoll suspects that the government is hiding something serious from them and all the researchers on the crash site have resigned. However, Carol is in no mood to talk about this. Instead, she complains about her ex-husband. She tells Driscoll that Tucker's strange call late night and he suddenly wants to see their son, regardless of being away for the past 4 years. As the two friends keep their conversation, they arrive outside Carol's office and part ways. Later, Carol begins her counseling session for the day. Her first patient is a middle-aged lady named Wendy who reveals that her husband has been acting very bizarre as of late. Just a few days ago, he killed their family canine without any regret. Carol right away realizes that something is wrong, but in the meantime, she just prescribes some medicines to her patient. After finishing work, Carol and her neighbor Pam take their kids out for trick-or-treating, as it's far Halloween night. After they approach a house, the family dog starts barking profusely, as if it has sensed something. Carol and her gang proceed to depart, however just then, the dog lunges towards Pam's son, Andy, and tackles him to the floor. Surprisingly, despite the terrifying situation, the little boy doesn't even terrify. Rather, he squeezes the dog's mouth together with his naked hands until help arrives and separates them. Shortly after, the group reaches Carol's home, in which the mothers have a brief chat. Pam reveals that Andy has been acting very strange from a few days, and on occasion she thinks that he has lost his emotions. But Carol, being a psychiatrist, assures her that it is very normal for youngsters his age. All at once, Oliver starts screaming from another room, and while Carol reaches there, she reveals a bizarre piece of flesh coming out of his hand. Worried, she without delay takes it to Driscoll's lab, in which his friend and famous scientist Dr. Galliano begins his experiments. In the meantime, a mysterious virus has begun to decimate the country. Lots of humans are dying regular, however no person is aware of the reason of it. As an end result, an emergency meeting is held within the Capitol, in which all of the famous researchers are present. Tucker Kaufman, who has been tasked with headlining the meeting, explains that the new virus is spreading at an exceptional rate and if they don't do something about it, the country will go into recession. When a few researchers ask about the answer, Tucker says that the simplest way to stem the spread is by conducting an inoculation program. As the meeting is going on, several infected waiters in the kitchen are seen puking into the tea that is going to be served to everybody. Later that night, Carol reluctantly decides to permit Tucker spend the weekend with Oliver, as he is the father in spite of everything. While she is driving to his house, a terrified girl suddenly seems and asks for help. She keeps mentioning that something horrible is going to occur, but earlier than she can reveal the cause, an automobile runs her over. Shortly after, the police officers arrive at the scene. Carol asserts that she is ready to testify against the reckless driver, however the head cop only tells her to head home. Listening to this, Carol starts assuming that something simply bad is taking place within the town. After some time, she drops Oliver at Tucker's home and leaves. That same night, Carol and Driscoll attend a lavish party in which they they engage in a short conversation with Czech diplomat Dr. Belisek and his wife Ludmila. The two then meet different diplomats, including Dr. Urish, and talk about the dark aspect of human nature. After the celebration, Driscoll tries to kiss Carol in the car, however the latter backs off, pronouncing that she doesn't want to destroy their friendship. The next morning, when Carol is heading to work, she notices something very extraordinary. Several humans have absolutely frozen, as if their soul has been taken away. While she reaches office, she is taken aback to discover that each one her clients have cancelled their appointments for the day. Just then, she gets a call from Driscoll, informing her that the test results of the strange skin patch have come out. Inside the next scene, Carol reaches the lab in which Dr. Galliano is waiting for her. He reveals that the skin sample is made of several molecular spores that take over the human mind during sleep and modify the genetic code, rendering a person volatile. Therefore, in an effort to prevent the lethal infection, they are forbidden from sleeping until they find a therapy. Meanwhile, Ludmila calls Driscoll and informs him that Dr. Urish has been acting strangely. As a result, the three right away rush to the diplomat's residence, where they come across Urish in a horrible state. Carol tries taking a photograph of him, but all of a sudden, the monster-like man wakes up and attacks her. But before any severe damage is caused, Driscoll thwarts Urish away, causing him to vomit a weird liquid and die. Following the incident, Carol becomes scared and rushes to retrieve Oliver from her ex-husband. While she reaches the location, she sees Tucker in a meeting with a number of his friends. Carol is worried about her son, however Tucker assures her that Oliver is playing at his buddy Jean's residence. Regardless of this, she isn't convinced and begins seeking out her son, but simply then, the guys from the meeting surround her. A terrified Carol tries to run, however Tucker effortlessly tackles her to the floor and infects her with his saliva. Luckily, she somehow manages to get away the house and get into her automobile. Carol drives recklessly through the neighborhood, resulting in an accident. When she gets out of her vehicle, she is again chased by a group of infected human beings. However, even this time, she evades them and enters a subway station. Shortly after, Carol gets on the train, which is full of passengers with the same vague expressions. Simply then, she gets a message from Oliver, who asks her to save him right now, as Tucker has taken him someplace. This worries Carol, and when she breaks down in desperation, a passenger tells her to behave emotionless if she doesn't want to get caught. Suddenly, a collection of infected passengers enter the compartment and start a brawl. They are trying to subdue Carol, however she somehow manages to exit the train and flee. She then gets back to the road and witnesses some police officers forcing the uninfected residents to be inoculated with the virus. In the meantime, an uninfected cop notices the sweat on her face and tells her to run, indicating that the infected ones can't sweat. Through this time, the city has become a war zone, and several people are committing the unthinkable to save themselves from the virus. In the following scene, Carol rushes over to the Belisek mansion, where Driscoll and Dr. Galliano are still conducting their tests. After a bit of discussion, Driscoll makes a decision to assist Carol find her son, while Dr. Galliano and his assistant prepare to travel to Fort Detrick, Maryland, to find a treatment for the virus. Additionally, they determine to stay unsleeping, fearing that they could have been infected. Later, while Carol and Driscoll head back to the streets, they notice Wendy being forcefully taken away by the police officers. When she tries resisting, the infected police officers zap her with a stick and knock her out. Regardless of this, she doesn't turn. Carol and Driscoll notice this and deduce that Wendy has in some way developed an immunity to the virus. After some time, the duo steals a police vehicle and arrives at Carol's office, in which they start looking through Wendy's medical profile. Driscoll finds out that Wendy was suffering from a brain infection referred to as encephalitis, and that is the purpose why the virus doesn't want to go into her brain. The virus only has a tendency to attack healthy brains in order that it can feast on it and multiply its quantity. Just then, Carol gets some other textual content from Oliver, mentioning that he's being held at his grandmother's home in Baltimore. Scared, Carol comes easy with Driscoll that she has already been infected with the virus. Despite this, her best pal assures her that the whole thing will be okay. Following this, Driscoll somehow manages to drop Carol off at the train station before the city gets sealed. After sharing an emotional goodbye, the two go away. Then, Carol boards the train to Baltimore, where she unexpectedly runs into Oliver's friend, Jean, who has also been infected. It turns out that he's also heading to meet Oliver. After the train reaches Baltimore, Tucker arrives at the station to escort Carol and Jean to his mother's place. That evening, Tucker gets a call from his friends and heads outdoor. Taking this as the best possibility, Carol scans through the house and eventually finds her son. The two then have an emotional reunion, and Oliver mentions that he is still uninfected despite sleeping every day. Here, we get to realize that the little boy is taking constant medications for his sleeping sickness, and this is why he isn't infected with the virus. Unexpectedly, Jean approaches the two and tries to infect them with the virus, but Carol without problem swats him away and rushes out along with her son. At the way out, Tucker catches wind of the escape and right now chases after his family. He tracks them inside an abandoned warehouse and tries hurting them, but Carol grabs an iron rod and strikes him in the head, finally killing him. Following this, the mom-son duo enters a pharmacy in which Carol reveals an injection and hands it over to her son. She then instructs the boy to inject it on her in case she falls asleep. Meanwhile, she receives a call from Driscoll and informs him about their location. As she is busy on the call, Oliver slowly approaches a door which has blood splattered nearby it. She at once stops him and instead enters herself to look at. There, she notices several infected people lying at the floor and rushes out, however not before grabbing a gun from one among them. A while later, when little Oliver falls asleep, Carol desperately searches for medicinal drugs and literally anything she can get her fingers on to keep her on sleeping. In the morning, the infected human beings in the room have come back to life and they repeatedly knock at the door to get out. This wakes Oliver up, and while he realizes that his mom has fallen asleep, he swiftly injects her with the syringe, hence saving her life. But the chance is far from averted. The infected humans in the room keep banging on the door ferociously. Just when it appears that all hope is lost, Driscoll arrives at the place. Carol is ecstatic to see him, however when she finds out that he, too, has ended up infected, she backs away from him. Driscoll keeps mentioning that the virus has made him extra powerful and he now feels invigorated. He also attempts persuading Carol to join him, mentioning that the new society will have no troubles including crime, hate, discrimination, and so on. A terrified Carol points her gun at him, but Driscoll still opens the door and lets out all of the other infected humans. Then, he mentions that the infected human beings hate the immune ones, pointing at Oliver. Saying this, everyone attempts to apprehend the little boy. However, Carol shoots and kills them one after the other. While it's Driscoll's turn, she just shoots him in the leg and escapes with Oliver. Outside, they steal a police automobile and narrowly evade several infected humans. While driving around haphazardly, Carol receives a call from Dr. Galliano, who tells her to come to a building where a chopper is prepared for takeoff. Following the instructions, Carol somehow reaches the location with Oliver, and in the end they're saved. Within the final scene, we are shown that scientists have subsequently created a vaccine for the deadly virus. Due to this, the virus has been eliminated from the whole world, and life has turned out to be regular once more. Dr. Galliano, who was one of the driving forces behind the vaccine, reveals in an interview that the vaccinated human beings don't have any memories of those events. In the meantime, Carol has adopted Jean, and she is now in a relationship with Driscoll. The movie ends as Oliver and Jean head to school, at the same time as Driscoll reads a newspaper, completely unaware of the heroism that he showed a year ago. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.